Okay, so we're just gonna like sit here and about to take this guy. What did he just? I I guess that sets me back, kinda. Uh oh, I guess I can just Blanchwood armor, right? Like we'll sub like a 5/5 that's gonna grow. And maybe has some removal left. I don't know. What is up, everybody? BPRadiant here, and today we are playing Kodama. We are going to be doing some classic mid-range things. I'm talking modifying our creatures. I'm talking turn dudes sideways. I'm talking playing some lands. We are hitting it classic style, mid-range style. Uh, okay, with that out of the way, we're doing something a little different today. We're trying to streamline our videos a little more, so we're doing something very new. We're doing about a minute intro, followed by a 5-minute deck tech, and we're doing our games that are now heavily edited to remove any kind of the pauses. I'm going back with some audio techniques after. Now, these will all be different for the games as I kind of try to figure out what I personally prefer and what you, the audience, prefer. If you have a style you like the most, or one of these you like with the, there's many ones that have background music, some that won't, maybe some with me doing different talking techniques, how much I'm talking, please let me know what your favorite game was today from audio perspective in the comments down below. Or if you like the video as a whole and you like the new style, just give me a like, throw that thumbs up, and let me know what you're doing. With that out of the way, guys, we are going to move right on to the main phase with the deck tech. What's up, guys? It is time for the deck tech. So we are playing Kodama of the West Tree. And so what Kodama does is essentially he has a 3/3 for 3 with reach and gives your modified creatures trample. Whenever a modified creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to choose your basic land, out of your library, put it in battlefield tapped. Now, a modified creature is going to be anything that is enchanted, equipped with an artifact, or has a counter of some sort placed on it. This is important because this is our build around. So basically, what we decided to do, the deck started out with us trying to build 1/1 counter synergy mono green Kodama, and it worked out pretty well. But then I thought, well, okay, well, let me throw in, a couple of artifacts that are really good. Oh, let me throw in a couple of enchantments that are really good. And I was like, wait, why don't I just, instead of going all in on the counter theme, let's go all in on the Kodama ramps me theme and put in cards that synergize just really well with Kodama. And that's kind of what we did here. I'm very excited. So to start off, we're going to go through things pretty quick. Over here, you have a really standard package of like ramp, removal, just your things that are in card draw, things that are really good in green. Like you're going to find your like Augur of Autumn, your Great Henge, your Toski, your Heroic Intervention, your Llanowar Elves. Like pretty basic stuff that you'd include in most green decks because especially just because there's some of the power picks in the color. And they kind of are the shell that helps make the rest of the deck function effectively. So here are some fun tech cards we kind of put in at first. Allosaur Shepherd, allowing most of our deck to be uncounterable in certain matchups, can be really backbreaking. Since Kodama gives our modified creatures trample, Ram Through is an excellent removal target since it can do excess damage through them and lead to some really surprising lethals. Scoot Swarm, since we're ramping very effectively with modified creatures, we can really start making back-breaking amounts of Scoot Swarms. Sereth can allow us to protect Kodama by being untapped for hexproof, and can also, with our in creature as a counter on it, or any kind of modified creature has trample, and Death Touch and Trample is also incredible at closing out games. And since we're ramping effectively, Finale Devastation is cast, and in this case, we don't even run Craterhoof. So it's been looking for other things. So let's start with some of our really effective other cards that I think have like really strong synergy. Warbriar Blessing being a removal function that also buffs our creature and gives them modified. Sanctum Weaver is a really good ramp piece here because we have a lot of enchantments, even if they're like not crazy important. We have a lot of like 2 and 3 drop enchantments. This can tap for a lot of mana very quickly. An Emergent Sequence coming down on turn 2 can allow us to have a 2/2 modified creature. Turn 3 play Kodama, Emergent swings, gets in, connects, and then boom, now we have it replaced itself and ramped us. So it's just a really good kind of 1/2/3 effectively. Next up, we have our counter synergy, things that kind of go just very quickly. Pelt Collector, Servant of Scale, and Iron Apprentice are all cards that effectively let us have a really early creature that can get counters, that can go in and start getting things going, with Sixth Sense, Eater of Virtue, and Shadow Spear being our 1-drop other ways to modify potentially a Kodama or another creature coming out early. Things like Voracious Hydra and Skoos, both are really great in the sense that they offer a utility in a fight and in graveyard removal that also synergize with our modified theme and are both, very good throughout the game. A couple of things we have as far as like some of our creature package that can really just kind of like make or break the game. Kami of Transience is really good here. Again, we have a lot of enchantments just like situationally, so it being able to be a recursive threat even once is already really good in our 2-drop slot. They can get a counter, and will get us some more lands for that end. Rishkar modifying 2 creatures and then taking our creatures with counters and turning them to mana dorks can be really good with like an early Servant of the Scalar and Apprentice even. Champion of Lambhole, allowing us to punch through wide board states, especially in mirror matches against other green decks or white-green decks, is just like invaluable. Dormant Grove is there to kind of just modify creatures as an enchantment. Skooz, since we have a lot of mana, theoretically we can make more oozes, and it modifies our creatures as well, so it just kind of comes down very effectively. But I want to talk about the real like linchpins of the deck. First, we have cards that equal kind of the power and toughness of the number of lands we control and modify through there, especially things like Blanchwood Armor and Blackblade Reforged. The fact that our commander gives trample to modified creatures means that all these really high power creatures now having trample can be just really effective. And for some of the cards I consider some of the best cards in the deck, first we have Tenacious Pup. It's a 1-drop that's going to give our next creature a modified and make them just really good. It's just a really solid 1-drop to have. Ranger Class and Roaring Earth are both 2-drop enchantments that can get counters into things, as well as serve as like value in the late game, with Ranger Class having the ability to cast creatures at the top, and Roaring Earth's channel ability being incredible since it will also give the card Trample Kodama out. Jugon Defends the Temple is really good as far as ramping us, modifying our creatures, and then also flipping and modifying our creatures, and having a modification payoff in the late game. But Nissa, Who Shakes the World, and Vivian Monster's Advocate are both key people in this deck. They both create a 3/3 modified creature. Vivian by placing counters on them, and then of course 3/1 counters being placed from Nissa, Who Shakes the World. The fact that they both kind of can quickly replace lands very effectively means that they just create a really strong value for us as a deck. Pretty standard as far as the lands go, nothing too crazy. We wanted to keep a lot of Snooker Forest so we can tutor for them effectively. But that is the deck, everybody. I'm very excited to showcase it to you. There's a lot of fun synergies here and there, and I think that as we get more things that add modified, the deck can kind of really explode from there. But let's go ahead and move on to the combat step and move to the games. All right, guys, let's try this out. Game number 1, we're going to have some jazz on in the background while I kind of just talk about the deck and kind of what I feel about the game that we're doing right now. Kalain is a very interesting one to top into. Weirdly enough, I actually had to cut a couple of games because I just kept coming into Kalain decks. I didn't see where it came from or who had played a Kalain deck recently, but that was very interesting, to say the least. Our opponent did kind of put us in the back foot here because this was the first one we played against, so I didn't know what to expect outside of potentially like just good stuff or some treasure shenanigans. This game was like honestly super intense for me. We decided to keep the Llanowar Elf for mana acceleration because we know that we keep, lands win games. And we'd never really seen Curseborn Witch, so we're kind of excited to see how he drafted his card there. We decided to go ahead and check for the Augur first here because I want to try to, effectively draw cards, which I think is like the important thing that Augur can do for you. It's why in Oracle Moldiah, I think it's just so good in the deck. I think it draws out a Murder Shredder, which I'm not totally sold that he wanted to do. Here in a minute. When we're like, okay, well, it's just Nissa, and they're probably thinking like, oh, could have used that Murder Shredder before. We decided to save our actual forests here. If he does have removal, we would still want to have access to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana next turn to Kodama, maybe Outland Liberator, destroy something, depending what his end goal ends up being here. And here we look and we think, do we care if 4 damage is on Nissa? Because we're trying to probably just ramp out here with the Kodama. Is like what I'm really thinking right now. So again, we decided to save our forests just in case. Because if Kodama goes to the yard and we can bring it back, why wouldn't we? And by putting this Reader Virtue onto Llanowar, we don't really need the mana at this point. We're going to get 3 lands from this play. So we get to trample through Trade the Kalain, which we'll get to cast again, but we still get mana off of it, and he's effectively trading when he might not have before. And that 3rd land just ends up being, I think, a big deal to me, because it's effectively 6 mana if we keep the Nissa on board. The deck, I think, has really good legs into other mid-range matchups, or even some aggro matchups if you get the right hand. And this time, I think this is a little bit of a risky play for us, actually, to put the Outland Liberator out. Because if we destroys it now, we don't have a way to deal with Shadow Spear and stuff. Thankfully, Bedevil comes out, but like we still have 2 3/3s that are replacing, and a lot of mana effectively at the moment. And a land here is weirdly good. I know that sounds weird, but it allows us to pump up the Liberator to go in wide here. And we're thinking about if we want to go for this or not, and like attack and then do it again. But we realize we don't have the double mana anymore, and I want to keep stuff back. We're attacking this, seeing if he'll block one of the 3/3s, so we can then blow him out. But then he makes a different block where I'm just like, oh, we'll just trade. I gotta be fair. Thinking like I would probably use my stuff to remove the Shadow Spear or whatever. And I just think that it's better for me to like not do that and get rid of his blocker, knowing he only has access to 4 or 5 cards next turn. Unless one's a sweeper, we're in a really good spot. Especially considering we are going to get to pop more counters on our Crawling Barons. And with the ramp we have, we're even putting more counters on there, which I think just is like another good reason to have Crawling Barons in the deck, as it's a growth man land, which when you have so much mana like this deck can generate, it's super worth. Honestly, at this point, we're kind of doing the math, and I think we're pretty confident got it. That land allows us to double Crawling Barons into actually equipping something, which in this case would probably be the Crawling Barons. And our opponent concedes. So here we are, we're going to be doing some standard analysis with no music this time. So we keep a pretty okay hand, in my opinion. It has 3 lands, since we do have the Tingle Florahedron, that we're debating if we want to play on one, but we could just use him to kind of ramp as well. Fortunately, we get a really good option here. If we'd really like this if we draw into a 3rd land, so we can go ahead and attack with the Emergent Sequence trigger, but we get a 2/2. I'm pretty happy with it. Looked like a bugged 4/4 for a second there. And thankfully we do draw into the 3rd land, thus keeping us like really just going really fast here. Which I'm a really big fan of. Like getting to ramp more and more. That 2 into 3 play is just something that like it really kind of makes or breaks some games, being able to have that like early. So we look here, our opponent has next turn mana for Gyruda, and we gotta be a little careful about that, to be honest. Like, it's kind of scary. We weren't getting trample damage over anyways, so there's no reason not to potentially go for the 1 in case he had like a buff of some sort. And we decided to go for the damage here, seeing as we wanted to ramp more for the Ren and 7 to be more effective. We do at least kick our opponent off for 2 turns of getting to get to the Gyruda, which I think was like an incredibly important decision. Even though we might want removal later on, I just think that that was like probably the call. Here we have to make a pretty tough decision, in my opinion, on what to go for, what we need to like evaluate. And it's basically, do we want to ramp or do we want to develop our board? Now our opponent could have a board wipe, which is true, but we're really ahead in mana advantage right now. And getting board presence out can be just like really incredible with this deck, with the ability to like keep our opponent down. And this means next turn for sure we can drop easy 2 to 3 counters, basically if we use a Snakeskin Veil, onto the Champion of Lamholt to get through any kind of blocking option. And we get blown up by Demon of Dark Schemes, which I honestly don't see very often. It was really cool. But we're still like feeling pretty okay. Because we have like Planeswalkers that are just like, we are going hard, guys. Now, our opponent does something pretty cool here with the Gyruda. So as you don't know, Gyruda's main thing is he exiles top 4 both players, and you get an even mana cost. And he hits his 3 lands, which were like, ugh. And thankfully we're able to quickly answer the Hostage Shaker. We were expecting the Hostage Shaker Chupacabra, but the 1 counter now gives us Trample, which is just like awesome. So getting to put lands in our hand to buff that. Yeah, we move over some pretty good stuff, but we get to buff 1 more. We can then get off the top. We grab a Sereth, which is like, oh, now we're supposed to trample and goes through. So he has 3 blockers, and we have a total combined power of 12 on the board, plus our 3/3. Means that we can now Primal Might, even for just a couple points, get rid of a blocker. And the Death Touch on the attack will mean that we get to push through for lethal. So, kind of a lucky draw on the Sereth on top. I still think we're in a position to win the game, but Still a good showing of hitting our curve. Game number 3 here, we are going to be doing play-by-play with some music. We do keep a hand here. It's a little, it has more answers, which we know against Valduk is going to be very important. We play out a forest, opponent plays mountain, play our second forest into a Blackblade Reforged, hoping we play a turn 3 Kodama into the Blackblade. Their opponent does play another land here, the Sanctuary with Robber of the Rich. Thankfully, they're not going to draw any cards off of it. We decided to play our third land out, play Kodama going out. Beautiful art on the Kodama there. Our opponent draws their next card, plays third mana, and then plays Heraldic Banner. Decide if we want to trade or not for it as they go for the swing. We think better of it, since we don't have too many options for them. We decide to block it, because you know what? I think we do just want to keep things off the board as best we can. We are facing mono reds. Keeping our life total high while we stabilize is very important to us. Managed to put another blocker here in the Toski. Our opponent gets out their Valduk, which means, of course, they're going to have something to drop onto it, and they slap a Dragon Mantle straight onto him, rocking him to draw a card, and then Valduk's ability to create a 3-1, which gets buffed to a 4-1 due to the Heraldic Banner. Great synergy on our opponent's side. We can still mitigate one of that damage right now. We draw our card and make a misplay here by playing the land and playing Kodama during main phase 1. We should have attacked with Toski to threaten that we had a buff, or to potentially get the ram through as well. We decided not to Primal Might here, which might have been a mistake. We'll have to see how that goes. They do block, negating his card draw since we are tapped out. And then our opponent does decide to play the Masked Shield, giving him Hexproof, making both of our removal cards in hand awful against it. Our opponent maybe makes a misplay here by not attacking with Valduk. We take down to 12, and it is looking grim, everybody. Thankfully, we are able to potentially double up here by playing our Tenacious Pup. And thinking on our feet here, we do Finale of Devastation for 3 mana. Searching our library for our only answer that I can think of off the top of my head, Rexage, right there in the front. As we look to remove the shield, reducing Valduk's ability to protect himself and the amount of things that are actually coming out. We decide that it's good enough to go forward here. If he wants to trade for the 3-3, we can. This will at least get some card draw going on to try to draw more answers. Our opponent does drop out more enchantments. A Swashbuckling come on into Valduk now, in addition to a Cartouche of Zeal. 7-5 is pretty rough, in my opinion, but we'll have to wait and see. Decides that Reclamation Sage cannot block this turn. Thankfully, we do have enough out that we do just drop to 1 mana here, and we are a little worried how to make sure you no trample. Taking a big hit, and it is unfortunate that that's going to happen, but the game, 22-1, it seems a little out of our reach, but we draw our next card. So what we do here is we play our land, look to equip. I'm not totally sure that was the right call. I potentially needed to leave another blocker open, but it's fine. We go to equip the Blackblade Reforge on a Kodama. They do get the ram through. Since Kodama does not have trample, we do get to do the excess damage that was dealt directly to his face. We leave one blocker back in case he has a haste threat. As we saw, he had some haste options earlier. And we know he's at least 1 mana away from Valduk, which means if he does draw mana to play Valduk, we have the Primal Might. We end our turn with 2 mana up. Our opponent draws and sits there thinking for a while as they Cathartic Pyre to try to draw in an answer. Any kind of direct burn would be really good for them here. Play a land into Combat Celebrant. Unfortunately for them, we do have the answer with the Blizzard Brawl or the Primal Might, and we win the game. So for this one, we are doing play-by-play. We keep a pretty good opening hand with a pretty nice curve of the Pulp Collector, Tenacious Pup into our commander, with potentially a turn 4 Ranger class. Drawing Llanowar does change all that, so we play the Llanowar. Our opponent draws their card, plays out a Mountain with a Cold Steel Heart. This time they are playing it for black mana. Makes it a little weird, they're getting a little ramp out here. We might not quite be able to compete with that, but we do end up kind of getting a pretty decent sawed off here with the Pulp Collector, and then growing the Pulp Collector for a pretty nice turn 3 Kodama play. Unfortunately, our opponent does get the Dark Ritual into their Korvold, which, oh god, turn 3 Korvold is incredibly scary for a deck like ours. They do sack a land, though, which makes us think, okay, maybe they don't have a ton, but we'll kind of have to worry about that when we worry about it. So we decided to go wide here by playing a Kodama with our Tenacious Pup, and get that counter for Vigilance, Trample, and a 1/1 counter to grow our Pulp Collector even more. Does IOK, unfortunately, does get our removal for the Cold Steel Heart, potentially. We were thinking about swinging in with a Tenacious Pup to get that going off. Do decide to go for a Shia, a big Shia over here. We'll allow us to do this. We are going to go ahead and just tap for mana here since our stuff is forest to level up our ranger class. See if he wants to trade the Pelt Collector for Korvold here since we know he's low on mana. This would increase his Korvold's mana cost to 7, which is unlikely, so we knew he'd go for it. We get to ramp up a little bit here, growing our Shia. Opponent draws. Still not really doing much with their Korvold they played. Maybe not a lot of sack fodder, hoping they draw into something. We just continue to hit more land drops, and we go for it. This time giving our Shia a 1/1 counter to give it trample, and put it lethal on the board, and that is the game. Getting that dub, everybody. We're going to do another one with analysis very similar to game number 1. I liked that one a lot, so let's try and kind of talk about the game in a similar way. We have an interesting hand here, so we have to mulligan it away because it doesn't have that much action. At least here we have the Eater of Virtue. We draw into a 3rd land, which is incredible. Either we can Kodama, or we can look to Settle the Wilds. Usually, I would want to Settle the Wilds when we have 4 mana out to hit one of our 5-drop Planeswalkers. We have a Nissa, though, so I'm not entirely sure what we want to do in that regard. Our opponent does get to kind of be faster since they got into ramp in the Arcane Signet. And which is actually I don't think we included in the deck because we had better options in creatures that we could actually do things with. Now, our opponent doesn't have a ton of removal, but I have seen the control version of Omnath come through a lot of times as like a Temur control shell. So we're still playing pretty slow. We gotta be a little worried about him getting this all the way to ult, but for now I think we're fine. Turning to O2 is just brutal though. We kind of gotta decide what route we're gonna take here. And so I think about potentially doing this a little while. So I go with the Rishkar instead, because this kind of buffs both up, sets us some more creatures to go, which can just really ramp us ahead. Putting the Sixth Sense on as well allows us to draw a card here, which I personally think is just like an incredible option to kind of double up advantage in both card advantage and mana advantage, which is going to make him less likely to 0/2 out of these creatures since they're still going to get +1/+1, or it will hold his Omnath back, both of which feel good. Him minusing Will here makes me think that maybe I should try to take an advantage and kill Will while I can, but then he grows Omnath super big, and I'm a little like, okay. So we kind of got to figure out what we want to do here in regards to like his board state. We do think that, I think it comes down to killing Kogla now, or killing Omnath and Kogla now, because if we don't do it now, we probably won't get another turn. And so at this point we're like, do we kill Will, or do we draw a card and ramp? And I'm thinking because he's going to get a chance to draw, the 0/2 is not that big a deal. We can get around that. It's not really like the end of the world for us since we're putting counters on and we've got an artifact to modify. And instead I want mana to be able to make a really big Nissa turn. Nissa and Ashaya, being able to keep things, a lot of the sweepers that he would have access to that are non-land, from just like completely obliterating us. Roaring Earth is pretty nice here, since we will be getting some lands in, and this can be a great way to kind of buff up our squad to trample over. Unfortunately, our opponent has a counter spell though. We were kind of trying to bait that out before we played the Nissa anyways, knowing that it would be good. And we're like, oh, it didn't do the Field of Ruin. Whoopsie doodles. And so we're like, okay, well, let's just make them all 3/3s. Let's go in for a big amount of damage here, get a lot of lands, put a lot of pressure on him. And I don't exactly, I think he was trying to protect his life total a little bit and keep me from drawing a card, which I think is still a pretty correct choice. But I don't know. I felt a little iffy about him blocking there with potential to like draw cards. And what do we know? He kills his own Will. We don't have to worry about it. He knows that we're not really that worried about the O2 anymore. Can get some removal action here, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, we lose card draw options, but we're still going to be able to Nissa. And at this point, I think we're firmly in the driver's seat as we're going to make a giant hit here to our opponent. Because, like, oh, you countered my commander. Oh no, whatever shall I do? We're a little cocky at this point, but I just, the control lists like this have been decks that make me just want to be cocky. I don't know why the auto tapper quite did that. I should get attacked first. We decided in this case we want to get rid of the Chandra plus, keep him from drawing other things he could draw here that would, you know, like win him the game. I don't know exactly what that might be. We're just thinking the deck with this Settle the Wild. It's a little late. But, I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good. I can't think of much he could draw here that would really put me out of it. We have the Ashaya in place, so the red orbs won't work. The blue border up Whelming Wave is the only thing that would affect our things because the rest are lands. And at this point, you know, we swap over Eater of Virtue over to Ashaya to give it trample, and swing. And have the ram through for if he has any cheeky shenanigans, and that's the game, guys. Well, everybody, that was the video. What did you think? It really was a lot tougher than my usual content, but it felt very creatively fulfilling to try something new with this one and to move out of my comfort box. And I think hopefully I delivered a product that was better and that you guys enjoyed more. Please leave me a comment down below if you liked it, if you made it this far. You know, I would greatly appreciate it if you kind of give me what you liked, what you didn't like. You know, this kind of helps me to improve this content and make things that are better for you. Unfortunately, this isn't the same as usual deck dashes. We aren't going to be doing any rating or like that. I'm going to be retooling that a little bit for the future with our litmus test. But all in all, I had a lot of fun with Kodama. I'm sitting at about a 68% win rate over about 40-50 games now since we started playing them on stream a while back. Which speaking of, you know, you all can always check me on stream, or you can check my Patreon at BPRadiant if you want to, you know, sub to the content and show me that, you know, you like what I'm doing and you want to see more of it. But that is it, guys. Thank you so much, and as always, be radiant.